So actually not going hiking because the place we wanted to go to is officially closed. Hey, the shear is here.
Yeah.
Hey guys. Hey Charles. Oh, I love the back. Oh, and Storper.
What did my kids do to my background? How do you change this background?
Oh, I'm gonna have a story for you about backgrounds in a moment, Charles. Hi, Biana. Hi, Faba. Hey, Jason.
For you.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Tom.
Hi, Eli. Hi, everyone.
Thank God.
Shabbat tov.
Oh my.
Oh, bonus. I even get to see the kids. Hey.
You see Rabbi Eli?
Who's there?
Happy Father's Day, Eli.
Yeah, happy
Thank
Father's
you.
Day.
Happy Father's Day to those that applies to. I am not being not politically correct. It's reality.
Yeah. I recommend you mute all of us once you start to actually talk, just because there might be children screaming in the background.
Yeah, don't you guys, can't you just mute yourselves? Do I have to mute all of you?
Mute myself. You can mute yourself. Yeah, I can mute myself.
Allow myself to mute myself. Okay. I'm not really sure how to do that, so one of you will instruct me. I've got enough issues just sending in, like, I've got to admit, can I just automatically admit people that are in the waiting room, or the penalty box, whatever you want to call it? Okay. Anyone out there know how I can automatically just admit everyone that's trying to get into the waiting room?
I think the next time you should not put a password on it. I think that would make it easier.
They didn't let me do that. They forced me to do that.
Les candidats déposent eux-mêmes leur
Hey,
copie dans les
Kobe.
bacs. La sortie se fait par
It's
rangée.
very annoying. But all right, I guess we'll have to deal with it.
Avec 400 candidats qui déjeunent en même temps, l'école a dû pousser les murs et investir la rue.
Wow, this is like this could be like a world record. There are 11 people that are like actually on time for Jewish events.
Hey,
what's going on, man?
Hey, what's going on, Eli?
Like I'm talking to you guys, and like everyone, nobody knows who I'm talking to. So it's good to see you, John.
You too. How's it going?
Thank God, I'm hanging in there.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, I'm very happy to see you. All
You
right.
too.
Well, I guess that we're gonna have to do the annoying admit people as they come in. Hey Ben. Hey Jacob.
How's it going, Rob?
Thank God. Always good to hear your voice or see you.
You too. I'll turn on my video then.
Just to ask again. Hey Shua Cohn.
Hi.
Does anyone know how I can automatically admit people so I don't have to push the button every few seconds?
Well, did you put a limit on how many people could join or no?
No. I think Zoom puts a limit of 100 people.
Oh, okay.
I'll be very flattered if we get 100 people, I'll tell you that much.
Yes, I don't know. I
Okay,
never hosted my own meeting.
All right.
I'm sure back in the
This is
day.
the first time I've hosted. John, you know what to do? Do you know how to automatically admit people that are coming in?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Well, we'll figure it out as we go along. It's an experiment for all of us right now. So we're going to give people one more minute because, it's usually a 5-minute thing. But
Is Joe coming? Since
he should be. He should be. He's fashionably late.
okay.
He gave me a number of warnings that I'll repeat a little bit later about what to possibly expect, which I don't really know if it's going to happen or not, but we'll see. I'm just worried that someone will try to come in and I'll be in the middle of giving the shear and then they'll get like blocked out or something. But I guess we'll worry about that when it happens. All right. I have 8:34 on my clock, so we're going to give the 5-minute grace period, and then I'm going to start. First of all, I'm very humbled that so many people came, and I'm so happy to reconnect with everyone. There's people from so many different worlds that are converging in this right now, so it's probably the only venue that I would see so many people from different parts of the world in my life. So I'm very excited about that. And I think there'll probably be people from all over the world. There's some people from Israel. There could be someone from Germany, Deutschland. Maybe some people from France. So we'll probably no one from Antarctica though. Sorry if anyone was counting on that. So in any event, I decided to call this Meaningful Life Lessons because it sounded good and I thought it was a good description. And it's going to be different topics. I'm usually going to use the Parshat HaShavua, the weekly Parsha, the weekly portion that we read from the Torah as a launch point. But as you guys know, we'll probably go into some book reviews and other, interesting or not so interesting facts, depending on who you are. And then I'd like to reserve the last 10, 15 minutes of each class for like a Q&A for people to ask whatever they like. I'm open to any suggestions on topics, just private message me and we'll do what we can. So as we mentioned before, I'm still learning the Zoom format. What we're going to do is we're going to try to keep questions, at least for the beginning, to a minimum, unless someone has a critical question. And then we'll kind of try to collect all the questions at like the halfway mark. So please, if you have a burning question, you can like raise your hand or whatever. Otherwise, you can write it down or you can send it to me and then we'll take it from there. And for your edification, this is being recorded on the cloud. So if you do anything silly or whatever, you may be recorded forever in posterity, and then I'll put you on YouTube. So just everyone should be aware that their activities are being recorded now, especially me. So I'm going to start with a triad of Zoom-related items that are also comedic in a way. Dove had warned me that a number of Torah classes had gotten like Zoom bombed by like some neo-Nazis and stuff like that, who started like sending ridiculous pictures to the group and other crazy stuff. So if that happens and somebody notices it, if you could tell me, and we will take whatever action is necessary. I don't really think that's going to happen, but let's hope not. The second thing is I'd like to apologize in advance. I really, really wanted to do the rent a llama for the Zoom class. I don't know if you guys are aware, I posted on Facebook a couple of months ago, but if you pay like $80, like somebody in Peru will Zoom a llama into your Zoom meeting. As amusing as that would be, I really just couldn't justify wasting that money in today's ridiculous climate. Obviously, it's better to go to tzedakah, but one day if someone would like to be an anonymous sponsor and Zoom in a llama as one of the squares, that would be very comedic for all of us. And finally, and some of you may have seen this on Facebook, but I'm gonna repeat this ridiculous thing that happened. So I gave a class a couple of weeks ago to the TVA guys, and it was a class analyzing a Rick and Morty episode. It's on YouTube now. I think it has like 100 and something views. And to amuse them, I changed the background on the computer that Ora usually uses for school to a Rick and Morty background, which was the "show me what you got" face. And obviously, I didn't change the background. And the next morning when Ora signed in for her school, there was this like, ridiculous Rick and Morty background, and her teacher promptly castigated her in front of the whole class and was like, "Ora, why do you have the background there?" And Ora was like, it's my dad. He used it to like teach a class. And the teacher was like, "Yeah, right. Please change it." So that was the first time I got Ora in trouble at school. Probably won't be the last time, but I thought you'd be amused by that. All right. The shiur today is in Refuah Shlema for Esther Bat Aline and all those people out there that are sick and are not yet well. And it is in loving memory of my father, Alav Shalom, whose Hebrew birthday it is, believe it or not, right now. He was born on the first day of Rosh Chodesh Sivan. And it's also in memory of my maternal grandmother, Michael Ben Sarah, who is my mother's father, whose yahrzeit it was on Friday. And I see that Jonathan is here. So Jonathan, we're going to do this in memory of your dad, Richard, Alav Shalom, who was a good friend. They should all have an Aliyat Neshama. We should only know from good things. So we're going to start with something from the Parsha, from the weekly portion, although obviously we've got an immediate challenge, and that is that those of you that are on the other side of the pond have a different Parsha than we do here in Israel. So this week we're going to do dealer's choice, which means that I get to pick whatever I want. I do what I want. And so we're going to do a little bit from both Parshat Shalach and Parshat Korach and mix it up a little bit. I have been learning a book by Rabbi Trugman. I'm going to send it to you now. Let's see how well this works. Rabbi Trugman is a Rav that was on the Carlbach. He lives on the Carlbach Moshav. Do you guys see that?
Yeah.
Everyone see that? Yeah. Okay. So that's the book that I'm going to draw a few things from. And you guys may know Rabbi Trugman. He is basically a Talmud of Rabbi Ginsburg and Rav Shlomo Carlebach. There's a little bit of information about him. We spent Pesach with him in Greece last Pesach. And he's just a wonderful teacher of Torah and a super sweet guy. For those of you that went to BCHSJS, you may remember him from such books as The Mystical Meaning of Dreams, really a fantastic book that talks about dreams, as well as another great book, which is The Mystical Power of Music. So anyone who's into music, so on and so forth, you could definitely pick up that book. Did it stop recording me? Like my voice stopped when I posted those pictures? No, it kept on going? Okay, great. So that's a little bit about Rabbi Trugman. So I want to start off with Parshat Shalach, the Parsha in which the spies were sent. And we automatically have a question. So the Jewish people had left Egypt where they were enslaved for hundreds of years. And, you know, we don't need to go into the details. It obviously was not such a great situation there. And then they get into some trouble in the desert, and then they're like, let's go back to Egypt. All right. So this really baffles the mind. What do you mean, let's go back to Egypt? You mean the place where we were slaves and they took our children and used them to put into buildings? That's where you want to go back to? Like, you never hear anybody saying, like, let's go back to Auschwitz. Let's go back to Poland, you know? Oh, hold on one second. Someone's telling me, what was that, Jacob? Go live. Tell me what I should do.
There's a button somewhere that allows you to mute everyone's microphone in case there's background noise from somebody who doesn't know that they're producing any.
Okay, can you tell me where that is?
I have no idea.
All right. Your homework for next week is to find out, if you're brave enough to come back next week, if someone could find out how to do that, that would be great.
Eli, at the bottom of your screen where it says mute and stop video, if you're in full screen right now, there's this little up arrow in the upper right corner of the video and audio tabs. You should be able to control it from there.
Okay. I'm not gonna, you know what, Charles, like, I'd like to do that, but I know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna end up spending like the next 10 minutes trying to figure out how to do that. I'm gonna mess everybody up. So next time we'll set it, but since you're all adults, I'm gonna ask you to all mute yourselves. I think you can do that. Go mute yourself, okay? All right. So it's kind of a crazy concept. What do you mean we're gonna go back to Egypt? So there's a very fascinating idea that for many people, fear of the unknown versus a negative situation that we're familiar with is basically the impossible challenge, right? So in other words, most people, even if a situation is really bad and they want to get out of it, they would rather stay in that bad situation because they know what it is than get into a new situation, right? That basically, you know, they don't know what's going to happen. In other words, as bad as a situation is, the fear of the unknown is much greater. And Rabbi Trugman brings this, this idea. He says, this thought process confirms the well-known psychological truth that for many or even most people, the known, even if negative, is preferable to the unknown and the dangers that lurk there. So for example, unfortunately, we know that many people are trapped in an abusive relationship or in a bad situation. So you ask, like, why won't they get out of there? Why won't they leave that place? I mean, they're in a bad job or whatever it may be. Because for most people, it's so scary to do something else that even the suffering in the current situation is better than that fear of the unknown. I mentioned this to a good friend, Dr. Rav Eisen. Some of you may know him from Leva Torah a few years back. And Rav Eisen mentioned that, and he happens to be a psychologist who's treating many people, that was like the #1 thing that people were meeting with him during this crazy time of, you know, Corona madness, that there's so many changes going on in all of our lives. And all of us, for the most part, are going to have to be adjusting to a new situation, which we don't know about. And therefore, you know, that's a big challenge to us, and it's something that's occupying our minds. So there's something to be said for, you know, judging others favorably in terms of, you know, I'm not ready to take that step. You know, we all kind of reflect how the spies were feeling. So that was the first idea that I wanted to share. We're probably going to come back to it in the future. We're going to move on to Parshat Korach, and today I want to speak a little bit about disagreements. I know that none of you get into disagreements with others, especially not on Facebook about political issues and the like. But in today's beyond intense climate, I thought it was something important to mention. So we know the story about Korach. Basically, he contested Moshe for the leadership of the Jewish people. And we have this statement. This is Rabbi Trugman opens up his article on it. We know in Pirkei Avot it says that a disagreement for the sake of heaven will endure, but a disagreement not for the sake of heaven will not endure. All right. And then we give examples of disagreement for the sake of heaven, which is Hillel and Shammai, and obviously Korach and his company being not such. So there's a lot to be said in terms of discussing things and debating things with other people. As a matter of fact, you know, we focus on this. We try to seek truth in all situations. And people always like to ask, you know, in the Gemara and the Talmud, why is it that even the discarded opinions are recorded? I mean, if they're discarded opinions and they're wrong, you know, why are we recording them? Why are we keeping them? So there's a fascinating idea that the reason that we're keeping them is because they offer perspective, right? We in Judaism, we're trying to find the emet. We're trying to find the truth of things. And that means that even if we feel a certain way, right, understanding another perspective which is different from our feeling, or an intellectual idea which is different from the way we look at things, not only helps us to form our opinion, but it might even solidify our opinion. It might even help us to understand what we believe, let alone possibly looking at the other side of the opinion. There's a beautiful quote from Rav Kook that I'm going to share with you now. And it is from one of Rav Kook's letters. Here we go. Okay, so I copied this from the essential writings of Rav Kook. Okay. And this is an idea that he mentions in many different places, and is the concept, and I'll read it to you. We must never forget that in every conflict of opinion After the furor passes, critics find that there are light and shadows on each side. Though we are resolute in fighting for the things that are close to our spirit, we must not be altogether committed to our feelings, but realize that there is also ample room for the feelings that differ from ours. God of the spirits of all flesh made everything good in its time. And this is, an idea that we find throughout Rav Kook's thought and writings, this concept of trying to understand other people's perspectives, trying to understand when I'm forming an opinion, well, what do the people that disagree with me have to say? Maybe they have a point, maybe they have, but unfortunately in the situation with Korach, and indeed in the situation with so many different people now and day, it seems like everyone's just trying to get their point across and no one's really trying to understand what the different perspectives are, let alone trying to find the truth. If we're indeed seeking the truth, we need to consider all angles, especially those that we don't agree with. The Arizal goes as far as to say that every point of view has some truth to it. And he mentions this when it comes to Talmudic analysis. Rashi comments, by the way, on Parshat Shalach that even falsehood, all falsehood has to have some kind of truth behind it. So when we go back to Korach, so what was Korach saying? Korach's first argument was that everybody is holy, right? And he was indeed right. Everybody is holy. Everyone is a very important creation. What's the challenge? The challenge is that Korach was saying something that was true, but his whole agenda was self-serving. In other words, he was using that argument in order to gain power. By the way, many people have pointed out this idea that Korach was saying that everybody matters and everybody is holy, and they connected it with the Hasidic movement. We know that in the 1700s, when the Baal Shem Tov started the Hasidic movement, there was a tremendous split amongst the Jewish people. There were people that were referred to as Amaratza and people that were, so to speak, ignorant. You're ignorance, right? People that basically didn't know a lot. And then you had people that were more educated. And there was such a divide within society that people didn't even sit together at the same table. So one of the things that the Baal Shem Tov taught was Ahavat Yisrael, to love everybody, regardless of how much knowledge they had or how much prowess or social status they had. So in fact, yes, everybody is holy. Everyone does matter. But when I use these ideas for my own personal gain, that's when we get into trouble. And so this is where we need to be so careful in analyzing our motives. Whenever we have a debate with someone or we have a difference of opinion, it takes a tremendous amount of intellectual honesty to dig deep and discover, what do I personally have to lose and what do I have to gain in this situation, right? In other words, a lot of the times we kind of just emotionally get into some kind of a debate or altercation or a difference of opinion, but we don't take a few moments to think and ask, well, why am I reacting like this? What do I have to gain? What do I have to lose? What skin in the game do I have that's causing me to react this way? And this brings to mind a key skill set in all areas of dispute that I like to talk about, and that's, of course, negotiating. I bring this up because, I've mentioned it before. I'm a big fan of Roger Dawson, who has many both books and audio products. I will just briefly share a book that I am reading, The Secrets of Power Negotiating. But in any event, so one of the ideas that he brings is that, of course, negotiating is not just for businesses or for diplomats. It's something that we do all the time. For those that have children, for those that have parents, life can be a constant negotiation. Of course, with those that we're married to, that's also comes into play. But he mentions a really key factor when you're negotiating with someone, when you're trying to have dealings with someone, we have to have clarity on what it is that both parties want, all right? So when I enter into a negotiation, it's critical that we know what both parties actually want. If I don't know what I want and I'm arguing with someone, if I don't know what I need, things are just going to slide out of control. By the way, also, one of the key things to having a successful negotiation and relationship is trying to understand, what does the other person want? What does the other person need, right? If we are wise enough to discern what that person really needs and wants, and we give it to them, obviously that can resolve the conflict. There's so much fruitless argumentation that's fought over misunderstanding because people just don't know what they want. And they don't know what it is that the other person wants. So one of the key things to try to identify is, like, what exactly is this person, what's bothering them? What exactly are they looking for? Now, I want to make a critical differentiation between, let's say, getting into a business deal in which you are actively negotiating a price with an outside party or something like that, and talking about a family situation, all right? When we're talking about friends and family, ultimately we want to create what's called a win-win situation, right? Because we all know, anyone who's married, anyone who's in a relationship, if you have a win, if you win, but your partner loses, who loses? Everybody loses, right? You're not going to get a win if you're happy and your spouse is unhappy, or your brother or sister, so on and so forth. So it's an idea which in business is used frequently. A successful businessman always tries to make a win-win type of a situation because they want the customer or the buyer, so on and so forth, to come back. But it's something that we also have to think about when it comes to family matters and dealing with friends. Well, is it all about getting my way, or is there something beyond just what I want? Is there something that mutually helps everyone else? Now, there's an absolutely beautiful idea in Judaism, which is the idea of being mevater. Now, this is a very unpopular idea in Western culture, probably in Eastern culture as well. Being mevater means giving in, right? We've pretty much been programmed from day one that if you give in, you're a coward and you're weak, and it just shows that you don't have what it takes, right? The Jewish perspective is much different. The Jewish perspective, and there's an entire book that I will share now, which I learned a tremendous amount from, and it is called, surprise, surprise, The Power to Give In, Stories About Being Mevater. This is a wonderful, wonderful book that I learned a tremendous amount from. And it talks about all these different scenarios where people took the route of peace, people took the route of not fighting, but giving in. And in the end, they ended up winning. They ended up getting what they want. So I want to float the idea that having the ability to give in to someone who you love and who you care for is not a weakness, but rather a tremendous strength. And don't fall into the trap that you always have to be right, or that you always have to get what you want in order to be happy. There's so much suffering that's caused by wanting to be right rather than wanting to be happy. This is something that my dear friend and colleague, Rev Gerzi, always loves to say. We would rather be right than be happy. God willing, he'll come on as a guest and you'll hear him say it with his proper accent. But think about how many fights, how many unfortunate circumstances have we been in because we just needed to be right. I need to be right. And at the end, right, so you were right, great. But everyone was miserable and you didn't speak to the person for weeks and so on and so forth. So in fact, much of the time we do get what we want when we admit the truth or when we give in. There's a beautiful story about Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who was a great tzaddik and Rosh Yeshiva, who lived until about, I think, 10, 15 years ago. And his first attempt to get a job as Rosh Yeshiva, he went in, there were different people giving lectures, kind of trying out. And he gave his, his intense Talmudic, lecture. And the person who was administering it, you know, was there with everybody else. And somebody in the audience basically pointed out that there's a very nice teaching, but logically speaking, you're wrong on this and this point, and proceeded to give over a teaching showing that what Rav Shlomo Zalman had said was actually incorrect. Rav Shlomo Zalman heard what the guy had to say, and he was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. You know, your reasoning is much better than mine. I admit, you're right. I take back the idea. And then he kept going, and he finished his talk. He went back home, and he walked in, he told his wife, yeah, this is what happened. I probably didn't get the job. You know, I was totally, you know, my point was like broken down. And a couple of minutes later, there's a knock on the door, and there is the administrator of the yeshiva, and he says, Rav Shlomo Zalman, we would like to offer you the post of Rosh Yeshiva. And he said, well, what do you mean? You want to give me the job? He said, yeah. He said, but hold on, I just totally, you know, was misproved when I gave my speech. Like, you saw that I was wrong. He said, yeah, but that's not what we're looking for in Rosh Yeshiva. We're looking for a man who can admit when he's wrong. We're looking for a man who can admit to the truth, not someone who's intellectually brilliant. The value of being modeh ala emet, admitting to truth, is much more important to us than intellectual brilliance. And so that was a very, very impressive story to me. So I just want to make a disclaimer, though, to be clear, we're not advocating being naive. We're not advocating, you know, just always giving in to people. Obviously, we have to be smart. We have to stand up for ourselves. And there are so many different illustrations of the importance of doing so. I will share a book that I would advise all parents to read. I've read this book about 3-4 times, and it is called Confident Parents, Competent Children. And in this book, he debunks a very important, something that I always, you know, read in many different parenting books. And some of you will be shocked to hear this. Some of you will be like, oh, that totally makes sense. But here it goes. So, do you guys remember, like, when we were kids, we were always told you always have to share all your toys with everybody else, right? Like, that was like a thing, you know, like, and we tell our kids, like, they always have to share everything. So the author, Rabbi Ackerman, says, well, is that really true? I mean, do all of us as adults always share everything that we have? Would that be a wise thing to do, right? So maybe telling our kids that they always have to share is actually teaching them a very bad life lesson. Maybe we're teaching them not to look out for themselves, and maybe we're teaching them an idea which ideally is great, but in the practical world, you know, nobody always shares everything, right? And we have to keep something for ourselves. So I thought that was a really interesting concept. And obviously, you know, we'll have to explore assertiveness in a future class, Bezrat Hashem. But, you know, we need to try to, of course, have a balance between giving in and when we need to assert ourselves. And one of the keys to having that objective perspective is having someone to speak to, whether it's a good friend, whether it's a spouse, whether it's a rabbi or teacher or a therapist or a counselor. It's always important to have that objective perspective to ask, you know, am I being a real pushover here, or should I be asserting myself, or should I give in? Because it's just not worth the, you know, the battle. It's not really worth the conflict. So these are some of the ideas vis-a-vis conflict and conflict management that we've discussed. Among the dangers is the drain that a conflict has on us, all right? So we all have a limit as to how much that we can handle, right? So what'll happen is, like, for example, someone will go on to Facebook or some other social media and get involved in all these political debates, you know, and get involved in the multitude of different issues that are going on, none of which I will address. And what happens? What happens is you get all heated up and you get all upset, and it's like, I can't even believe that that person could say this. And how could people believe this? So on and so forth. And then what happens? Then you come back to reality and you deal with your friends and family that are around you. And all of a sudden you notice that you have no patience left for them. And the result is devastating. You just spent all of your emotional energy on some inane debate on social media about what's going on in the world. And then when, you know, your spouse or your child or your brother or sister, whoever it is that comes up, you just like fly off the handle and they didn't do anything wrong. Really, you're still upset because of what happened on Facebook or because of that political discussion. And now you have no room left for them. So this is an observation that I've seen from myself, which is why I'm really trying not to get involved in any kind of political altercations or debates, so on and so forth. To quote Rabbi Krohn, he has a number of stories, but the famous story about Ze lo chashuv, to really think, you know, is this really important? Is this really worth me getting into a fight over? Is this really worth, you know, getting all bent out of shape? And each one of us really has to think about that before we take that step. Rav Buchatzera, who is a great grandson of the Baba Sali, I have the great privilege of learning with almost every Shabbat. He pointed out that what happens when the plague hits Bnei Yisrael, when the Jews get hit by the plague in Parshat Korach, who is it that staves away the plague? It's Aaron. Aaron, of course, is the emissary of peace. So I think it's not for nothing. We've got a clear Torah statement that to protect ourselves spiritually, shalom, peace, is of utmost importance. So I want to share something on a different thought that ends the Parsha. I thought of something vis-a-vis, you know, all of us are kind of wearing masks when we go outside. If we don't, we're getting fined. So I thought it's like so interesting, you know, what is a mask besides the medical benefits, which there may not actually be any. And Charles, I'm not going to get into this right now, but obviously this is one of the many debates, so on and so forth. But isn't it ironic that, you know, we're living in times where truth and falsehood are so intertwined, right? Like every day, like there's a new thing that turns over what we said yesterday. Everything is just so mixed up. And, you know, we live in a time where most people in the world wear a mask of superficiality. So isn't it fitting that now it's been turned physical? You know, it's like so many people are such fakers out there. You know, now like everybody's got to wear a mask just to show how fake everything has really become. So it's really somewhat telling. So I'm just going to end off with a couple of messages. Things are very confusing right now, and I am resisting the urge to jump to conclusions about anything. I'll give you a personal example. I was talking to my sister Aviva about this. So about, I don't know, 2-3 weeks ago, the thought of my going to a hospital was beyond comprehension. Like to go to a hospital would be like insane, all right? And then like a couple of days later, someone that we love got sick, and we did not hesitate to go to the hospital to visit them when they needed us to be there. It wasn't even a second thought. So it's like in one moment, the entire way that I was looking at what I was doing just changed because of the situation on the ground. So I'm going to be very happy to admit that I don't have all the answers or any of the answers. And I'm going to be very cautious in making any kind of definitive statements about anything that's going on right now, because it just seems that the world is just that crazy. So I want to thank everybody. It's really great to see so many different people. I'm very happy to speak to anybody individually. If anyone wants to talk to me at any point, the best thing to do is just send me a Facebook or WhatsApp message and we'll set a time to speak. I'm currently pretty much unemployed, so I'm very happy to speak to people and, you know, discuss whatever you would like to discuss outside of politics. And B'ezrat Hashem, I'd like to do this every week. The time and the day are not necessarily set. This just happened to be convenient for me right now, but I'm happy to alter the time. And in the future, I'd like to bring in some guest speakers like Reb Machlis, Reb Gedalia Gurfein, Reb Gerzi, some different people that have been very honored to learn with. We can have like an interview, so on and so forth. And I would just like to commend myself for not mentioning essential oils or Bitcoin throughout the entire 40 minutes that I was speaking, although there were many opportunities that I could have done so. That is my little bit of self-control. All right, so I'm gonna stop talking now because I think I talked for long enough. And we have a question from Mitch Goulson from California.
I'm actually in,
I have not had the pleasure of saying this for, what is it, a year and a half now. Mr. Goulson.
Oh wow, Rabbi, how are you? Yeah, I was waiting for some stock talk or some Rick and Morty talk because the last few episodes were great. I thought they were.
I gave a whole shear on it, Mitch. I mentioned in the very beginning, when you rewatch this shear, you'll see. If you search YouTube for Rick and Morty Torah, I have a talk on the Story Train episode.
I know. I saw that one. That was pretty good.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. What stocks do you think will skyrocket very soon?
I don't know anything anymore about the stock market or anything financial. I absolve myself of all knowledge. Nothing makes sense anymore. The United States is just printing trillions of dollars and the stock market is just going up like there's no tomorrow. And I don't know. I understand that you have some rioting and stores being destroyed and all sorts of craziness, but I don't know anything anymore, Mitch. Nothing makes sense to me anymore. So I'm going to basically say I don't know.
How are they in Israel with it? I know they opened schools.
So what's going on in Israel right now is we're moving towards a full opening, but the cases just spiked in the last couple of days. So they're thinking of, they're saying maybe we'll go back into lockdown. The Prime Minister and his cabinet are going to decide of that. But basically, we've been back in shul. The stores have been open. We're wearing masks. We're keeping some distance. I can't honestly say that in every shul there's 2 meter distance, but people are being cautious. Many people in Israel, it's pretty much over. Many people are just walking around like, there's nothing going on. And that's what's happening practically here. I think that for the most part, people are being cautious, but people are trying to get back to normal life.
Yeah. I like JD.com. That's me.
Okay. Excellent. Okay. Chava, is that a hand up? Anyone? You can just unmute yourself. Yeah, Samantha. I think you have to unmute yourself, Sam, or anyone who wants to ask questions, so on and so forth. I see.
Hi, Eli.
Morty,
I do have a question.
guys.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I have a question regarding after Shabbat, before Havdalah. You once mentioned many years ago during a shir that we have to see technically 3 stars. I'm sorry for the weird question, but the thing is, it's okay, sweetheart. It's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry. She's only 2.5.
Okay.
Okay.
She's cute.
Yeah, perfect, right? She's my little perfect. Anyways, yeah. So it's okay, sweetheart. Shh, it's okay, baby girl. So my question,
Sam, to answer your question, the 3 stars is just like, it's not the ideal way of judging when Shabbat is over. It's something that they use when they didn't have, clocks and exact time, so on and so forth. Okay. Generally speaking, we rely on, the printed times or the time that you see that's exact on your phone. If you have absolutely nothing else, to tell time, let's say you're camping and you're in the middle of the desert or whatever it may be, you can rely on that, but it's not the ideal method of telling when Shabbat is over.
that's what Lewis said, and I was really confused because that's what I thought you suggested many or said years ago during a shir when I used to go to your shirs in Bergenfield. And then he goes, oh, well, Eli meant this and that and the size of the stars. I'm like, and the size of the
Hey,
stars.
this is why I
and
have to be careful. Like something that I said like 10 years ago in sheer is going to come up at me. So everyone should take this as a lesson. Very good, Sam. Thank you.
I'm sorry, what, Eli?
I said very good, Sam. Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay.
So aside from the set times on the calendar, I guess rely on that more?
Yes, you should rely on the set times that have been posted. And if you have no choice and you don't know what time it is and there's like an emergency situation, as like a fail safe, you can use the 3 stars. Okay. You're welcome. Anybody else?
Rabbi, quick question here.
Yes. Hey, Morty.
Hey, Rabbi, how are you? Just a quick question about what you're working on personally this week in terms of goals.
What am I working on in terms of goals? Wow, that's a good question. I'm kind of in a holding pattern right now. I'm not sure what's going on in my life next year. It's very possible that no students will be allowed to come into the country, which would be very, obviously troubling because that will mean that I can't really teach outside of Zoom. So I'm trying to kind of figure out how to go forward and what my backup plan is in case, there's no teaching. I don't really have, Morty, a weekly goal. I have a daily goal of learning that I try to do. I try to do chesed every day. That's something that, to be nice to someone or to help somebody out. I try to make a certain amount of phone calls every day to people that I know that may be lonely or that may, not have anybody else calling on them. I have like lists of stuff that I try to accomplish that are a more, mundane level, like go to the store and buy XYZ or, whatever it may be. I am not working on, I guess, weekly goals right now. I'm just trying to go day to day because that's the way life has been. It would probably be wiser to have weekly goals, but I'm just not there yet, Morty. And I commend you if you've gotten weekly goals, man, because it's really crazy times. And I understand that sports, which you're very involved with, may be on hold, I guess, indefinitely, which must be just totally insane. But yeah, so I'm focusing on, learning, on doing chesed, on trying to think of what things I can do to make other people's lives a little bit better. And that's pretty much what I've been up to. I'm also, of course, watching Bitcoin and the market and just, marveling at whatever's going on out there. Constantly checking the news, looking at what's going on. Will America exist tomorrow? We were thinking of coming, but I don't think that's happening now at all. I'm fascinated by what's going on in the new Republic of Chaz. I find that very interesting. Trying to figure out, what the government here in Israel is going to be doing over the next few weeks. So yeah, there's lots of excitement. So Morty, as I've told many other people, right now I'm focused on maintaining sanity for the duration of this, kind of pandemic. And when I achieve that maintenance of sanity, I think I'll be able to think about, goals, so on and so forth. But right now, just keeping it together, trying to be happy, trying to be cheerful. I think that's the main goal that, we all could be doing.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Rabbi.
You're welcome. Okay, next. If anyone has a question, please feel free to just unmute yourself and say the question.
Rav, it's Ben Wade. How are you?
Ben Wade, the man, the legend.
It's been a while since I heard that. Thinking about the U.S., may I ask what your opinion is on the current state of affairs in the States these days? You're very lucky you don't happen to be in New York like me, but just curious what your thoughts were, and maybe if you thought maybe Jews should maybe think twice about remaining here.
Well, look, we left 5 years ago because after kind of seeing what was going on different campuses and seeing where the youths were at, we decided that was our exit time. You know, things are obviously very scary right now. You know, there's any number of things that are going on. And in past world history, when these types of things happened, it didn't end up looking good for the Jews. I'm not a prophet. I'm not someone who, you know, knows the future. I don't know what's going to happen, but it doesn't really look great in America for anybody, let alone the Jews. I'm not saying that people, you know, should just get on the boat right now, but I think you should certainly have some kind of a backup plan in case things get really crazy. My brother Mikey even has like a backup plan. So that's when I know that it's important to have a backup plan, you know, of how you're going to escape or whatever it may be. But, you know, look, I obviously think the best place for, you know, us to be is in Israel. And I, you know, I'm here, but I understand that everybody has their own personal situation and their own circumstances that make it very difficult to just pick up and leave. And that's not an easy thing. However, as a student of history, you know, like you look back and you look at all the times that this happened, like you look in the last 100 years, you know, look at what happened in Europe before the Holocaust, look at what happened throughout the Arab lands, you know, prior to 1948, prior to 1967. You know, it's likely that your grandparents, I know for sure my parents, you know, they just had to go and they had to leave. They probably wish they had a little bit more lead time. So not getting into apocalyptic scenarios, so on and so forth, I think that any intelligent person who looks at what's going on right now in America would say, you know what, just in case, I should have some kind of an exit strategy or a backup or something, just in case this whole thing goes south. So I think that's cogent. I think it's the wise thing to do. I'm obviously very concerned for, you know, all of you guys and my family and my friends and everyone that's in America. Some very scary stuff that's going down. So without, you know, going either political direction, both sides of the coin look very scary right now. And neither one looks, you know, good for, you know, particularly for Jewish people. So yeah, Ben, I would say you should definitely start thinking about, you know, at least have a background plan. I'm not telling you to run out today. I'm not telling you to get super paranoid and panicky and go crazy. It's not for nothing. It looks like the Aliyah figures are up, you know, 100% from, you know, one year to the next. But I would have told you to have that kind of a plan a year ago also, just in case. So kal v'chomer, how much more so when you have, you know, pandemonium and chaos in the streets in so many different, you know, cities in North America, where, you know, a lot of the targets are Jewish places of business and synagogues, so on and so forth. So, yeah, things are very scary.
All right. Thank you, Rev.
You're welcome. Anybody else? Bueller? Bueller? No? All right, guys. So I will, I hope that you, ladies and gentlemen, will private message me questions or topics or, you know, that you want to talk or whatever it may be. I will try my best to, you know, to make this a weekly type thing. And it's been a pleasure. It's just great to see everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eli.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I'm wishing you all safety, both for your health and for your situations, wherever you may be. And many blessings and all the best.
Sure, Rev.
Okay.
Thank you, Eli. Hey, Eli,
You're welcome. Yes.
quick question. Is your brother okay, at least in the States?
Yeah, my brother's been in quarantine from before Purim because he like knew this was all going to happen. So he's stockpiled enough supplies for like the next 10 years. So thank God he's doing good. We're just really sad because we were supposed to see him over Pesach, you know, but that didn't happen.
This whole thing is sad. I keep hearing from all my friends in the United States that whether they're in Muncie or wherever, cousins and family across the way, that you know, there's so many riots and all this stuff, and it's so sad that everyone's fighting.
Yeah. Well, everyone should
I
be
mean,
blessed.
you're
and
definitely-
safe and,
You're definitely more political than I'll ever be, Eli, and I definitely respect your opinion. But like, I'll be honest with you, like, the things that I'm hearing from a lot of people in Muncie and New York, it's just really sad. And I don't understand why, if things are that bad for the Jews, the Orthodox Jews, the secular Jews, why aren't they making Aliyah? Like, half my friends claim, oh, there are riots, things are not good,
well,
everyone's at work.
Sam, remember what we said in the first part of the shir in Parshat
Oh, I'm sorry.
Shlach, you know?
I'm sorry, I missed
Fear of the
time.
unknown.
I was paying attention to Deborah Bloom, I'm sorry. I missed like 2 or 3 minutes, I'm sorry.
So we spoke about how the fear of the unknown is much more crippling sometimes than the negative situation that you're in that you know about.
All right.
So that's a lot of people. They're very scared. What am I going to do in Israel? Where am I going to have a job? What am I going to, where am I going to live? So that's really,
Well,
very,
I think
very
that,
challenging.
well, hopefully unemployment is extended this year for everybody that's out of work, like,
Yeah.
Okay,
So
Eli.
we'll hope and pray for the best. All right, Sam. Thank you so much. Take
Are
care.
you
Thank
having
you
shir next week?
thank you for always encouraging me to do the shir. Yes, God willing, we'll continue next week.
Okay, God willing, I'll see you on Zoom next week. Okay, have a good day.
Excellent.
Eli. Good night.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye,
Take care.
Biana. Biana,
Bye.
this is all because of you. Thank you so much. You get the credit.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm
I
happy that we
appreciate it.
spent this time together.
Yes, I'm looking forward to doing it every week.
Fabulous.
Take care and all the best, Biana. Be
Okay.
well.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. Bye, Mom.
Bye, Eli. Oh, 1
Speak to you
minute.
soon.
Attends. Voilà, bye.
Bye-bye.
Allez, à bientôt.
À bientôt. Au revoir.
Bye.